My friend's birthday's coming up, and so I'm gonna make him a birthday cake. Am I kind of double dipping so that I can make my friend a cool cake that he will like while also getting to make something for the channel? Yes. Is that a bad thing? Comment below. So 2 years ago, I also made him a birthday cake. At the time, I was like 4 or 5 months into my baking journey. This is what it looked like. Obviously, there are many problems with it that you can see right away. I guess I would say it was pretty impressive for how early I was into my baking career, but essentially I had an issue where the cake just was not really big enough to get an 8x8 grid on it. It's just extremely messy. Like at a first glance, it's like, wow, look at all the chess pieces. But then when you really like get down into it, it is not that nice of a cake, I don't think. The inside was pretty fancy though. I did like a checker effect on the inside. A lot of work went into this, but I wasn't really happy with the results. And so I am here to redeem myself by making another chess cake, but I am tweaking it to make it a little less daunting of a task. So I did Google like chess cakes to see if I could get some inspo because I wanted to do something that was like simpler than what I did before, but still like obviously gets across the chess of it all. And a lot of them you see are just like exactly what I did, but better executed, like the full grid, all the pieces. Some of them have like not as many pieces and they'll be in like a particular position, I guess, but I don't know enough about like chess theory in the game to like decide on what would be like an epic thing to put on there as like the pieces in their positions. And then some of them have like not that many pieces at all. Like this one has one piece. Happy birthday, my king. Okay, wait, that's kind of everything. But anyway, like I don't know. It would be easier to do if you were like 1 or 2 pieces, but I just don't like it as much. It doesn't feel as complete to me. And then I started searching like chess puzzles because my friend told me about these like little games where they like give you like a small grid and it's like a certain position and you're supposed to like solve like, oh, how do you get checkmate in 3 moves or whatever. And I don't know like how this investigation led me to the next step, which is this Wikipedia page for mini chess, which by the way, comment below how you feel about this new Wikipedia format. Like, I don't know how I feel. I think it's probably objectively better, but I'm just kind of averse to change. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. So mini chess is a family of chess variants played with regular chess pieces and standard rules, but on a smaller board. And the motivation is to make the game simpler and shorter than standard chess. And so this is where I landed. I'm going to pick one of these mini variants so I can make a smaller grid and make fewer pieces, but it'll still be like a legitimate form of chess and not just like me randomly putting things on a grid. I'm actually really excited about the idea of this because I've been playing some chess with my friend when we hang out, and I just don't know what I'm doing, you know? I'm just like shooting in the dark. And I was like, I wish they had like a tiny chess where there were like fewer pieces on the board so I could like get used to that and reading that, and then I could like graduate to something bigger. And he said that he thought that would be like possibly even harder because there would be like less freedom, and maybe that's true, but it's just stressful looking at an 8x8 grid and seeing all that going on and just like missing things all the time because I can't read it all at once. So I'm torn between micro chess and baby chess. So micro chess is on a 4x5 grid. All it says here about this is another chess variant on a 4x5 board. Micro chess was invented by Glynn in 1997. Castling is allowed in this variant. That's all it says. And I followed the citation and I found like a document, and this is all it says. Board 4x5 manuscript note, presumably deriving from personal communication. So it doesn't really say anything about it, but I guess what you're supposed to assume is that everything is just like the rules you would expect. So there's not really much to say anyway, but I was just hoping for like a little more history. And the pros to this are that there's only one kind of piece per color, and I only have one mold per type, I think. So it would be like less work for me to make this one. I wouldn't have to make like a ton of pawns. But I don't love that it doesn't include the queen. Like, it doesn't actually include every kind of piece. So down here, it says on the 5x5 variants, a board needs to be 5 squares wide to contain all kinds of chess pieces in the first row. And so I think like the main version of this is Gardner chess, which is this one. And I think the only difference between this and baby chess is that like the pieces are mirrored on one side in baby chess. But if I'm gonna do a 5x5, I'm doing baby chess because it's called baby chess. Like, that's the only reason. I have no other reason to prefer it over the other one. It's just a baby, you know? But then I have to make 10 pawns, which is only 6 less than when I did the full one. And it's a square, and I do like that better than this rectangle, but it's just like, the whole point is that I'm trying to make something smaller. So I really can't decide between baby and micro. So I think the deciding factor is gonna have to be how impatient do I get trying to make the chocolate pawns. And if I just can't handle the heat, then I just have to default to micro chess. And if it's not that big of a deal, then I'll probably do baby chess because I really would like to have the queens on the board. So to make the pieces, I have these 3D molds that you like squeeze them together, and then you like pour the chocolate in them, and then when they harden, you can take them apart and take the piece out. Some of the parts of the piece can be a little delicate, so I hope I don't have to do too many tries on these. I hope I can just get it right the first time. But they don't stay together very well, and even if they do, there's kind of like a gap. So really, you need to like keep these together somehow. And I know this seems gross because these are hair bands, but they have not been used, and I just washed them by hand with hot soap and water just to make sure. And it's not like it's gonna be touching the chocolate anyway, but like just to be extra sure, I washed them. Yeah, you just have to kind of use this to make sure that it stays together. And then for the chocolate, when I did this last time, I was trying to be like really cute and fancy, and I was using like a little double boiler and continuously melting chocolate, and then I would need more, and then I would have to melt more, and it just was like a really messy, lengthy process, and I'm like completely over that lifestyle. I'm going to melt this in the microwave, and I promise it's gonna work, and then I'll put it in a piping bag and just fill the molds, and I really won't have to repeat anything except the pond, and then I'll have to do the other color. So by doing less pieces and not doing the double boiler, I think this will be less painful than last time, because making the pieces was like by far the most intensive part, I think, and I think it's still will be this time, but I'm cutting some corners, and I think it's not gonna hurt me at all, and it's just gonna make it more awesome. So I put it on 50% power. Honestly, a lot of the time when I melt chocolate in the microwave, I just don't even bother with that. I just do like small times and take it out and stir it at 100% power, but just to be extra careful, I'll do 50% because it is a lot of chocolate, so I don't want to risk like the uneven cooking and totally scorching one part of it and the rest of it just like not being melted at all. I don't know, so I'll be a little cautious. I put it in at 50% power for like 45 seconds, and that didn't really do much, and then I did 50% at a minute and a half, and then I just had to stir it for a minute or so, and now it's totally smooth and melted. I am a little concerned about the fact that it's not like flowing very well, and the solution to that typically is to add some shortening or like oil into it just to help that process. But usually when I add oil or shortening to chocolate, when you touch it, it is just like excessively like melt in your fingers. And I would like this to be like a playable cake, like, you know, we play the game and then we can eat the cake. So I would really rather not introduce more oil if I don't have to, but I'm not sure if this is gonna be like too stiff to work. So I'm gonna test a pawn and see how that goes. Primary concern, I think, is just going to be if it gets in all the little crevices that it needs to express the details of the shape. So now I'm going to put this in the freezer, I think for only a couple minutes, and then I should be able to pop it out. All right, so it's been more than a few minutes, probably like 20 or 25, because it was like taking longer than I thought, and then I started working on something, so I actually don't know how long it actually needs, but it's definitely ready now. Beautiful. So there is a little part that the chocolate like didn't seem to get into the mold, but looking at the mold, I just don't know if it's even possible. Like, I don't know, it's like messed up there. So all the pawns I make are probably gonna be flawed in that way, but it is what it is. All right, so I've literally made one piece, so it's kind of early to say, but I feel like I can stick it out. So I think I have the patience to make 10 pawns, 5 black, 5 white, and then obviously I just have to do one of all the rest of these. All right, I feel like I started making those pieces at like noon something, so it definitely took a lot longer than I thought it would, but I also was like doing tasks in between preparing other things, so it probably didn't need to take that long. And as you can see, I've already baked a sheet cake, and I have some peanut butter frosting prepared. A, because my friend really loves peanut butter, and B, because I think, you know, it's like a good color. It's like, oh, it's the wood on the board or something like that. That's what I did last time as well. And I have a little template here to cut out the size of the board. So this is gonna be a very thin cake, just a sheet, but that kind of makes it more board-like. So, but I'm having a bit of a problem. Squares are 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, and it's like as big as my turntable. I don't have a cake board that is big enough for this, so I'm just gonna have to like decorate the cake on the turntable itself, and that's where it's gonna have to live. And even now, it's still just barely poking out on the corners. I had a wider edge because I wanted the edge to be bigger. I thought it would look better, but I just had to trim it down even more so that it would fit. And it still, like, it kind of doesn't fit, but I don't want to trim it down anymore. And I was like, I guess I could make the squares small, but like, they're such a good size. I don't think I should make the squares any smaller, because that's one of the problems I had in the last cake, where the squares were way too small and the pieces looked all crammed together. So I like this square size. I wish the edge could be wider, but I do not have a dish available to make that happen. I'm a little nervous about how this is gonna go, but I'm just gonna try my best. So my plan is to obviously cut out a grid-sized piece of cake, cover it in the peanut butter frosting, and then delineate the grid with a pizza cutter or something, and use the rest of this melted chocolate to make the grid, because I think that will hopefully look a little smoother and cleaner than when I did it in buttercream. The one disadvantage to that is that the pieces are not going to be able to like really adhere to the board. They're just going to be placed on the board, but that's more realistic, baby. So it might be a little odd because some of the pieces are a little wobbly, but it is what it is. That is a plan. That's what I'm going with. Let's assemble this cake. And here we have it, the completed playable baby chess cake. I'm very happy with how this turned out. I think it definitely looks a lot better than the chess cake I made 2 years ago. I did the same thing with the frosting. I used peanut butter frosting and then I painted brown food coloring on it to give it slightly more of like a wood effect. I'm not really sure if that worked, but I do think it personally looks better than if I just had the peanut butter frosting. Obviously, the grid looks a lot better. The chocolate was smoother and cleaner than doing it in buttercream, and it helped that, you know, I was very careful when I measured out the cake that I was gonna have enough space, which I didn't really do last time. I just was like, oh, well, this is an 8x8 pan. I can do 8x8 squares, it'll be fine. But the cake is not actually 8x8, it's a little smaller, and that completely screwed everything up for me. And 1x1 inch slots would really not be big enough for these pieces anyway, because these are 1.5 by 1.5, and they're pretty perfect. The grid, of course, could be even better, I'm sure. The lines are not perfect all the way around. And I guess a drawback of this cake as compared to the last one was because the last one used buttercream, the pieces, you know, were like stuck to the cake. And in this case, they're just placed on top. I could stick them down. I could put buttercream on the bottom of all the pieces just to make sure they stay, but I don't want them to stay because I really did want it to be like a playable chess cake. You move the pieces and you take them and so on. So I pretty much got exactly what I wanted out of this project. So I'm very happy with it. And I am also glad I decided to go with baby chess instead of micro chess. I think it looks better that it's a square. It's more like regular chess. It looks pretty full. Obviously it's not a full chess set, but I think it just still looks better than it would have if I did micro chess. But since this cake is for my friend's birthday, I'm not gonna cut into it. But of course, I'm always prepared for my taste tests. And I made an even minier chess cake on a 3x3 board. According to the Wikipedia page about the mini chess variants, there aren't any interesting or established games that work on a 3x3 board, but I just did this for the sake of having something that I could test. It was very helpful to have, actually, because I did everything on this before everything on this in stages. So I iced and colored the brown frosting on this first, and I was like, okay, I got the technique down, then I did it here. And then for the grid, the first squares I did looked pretty terrible, actually. The first two looked pretty awful because the chocolate was not thin enough to like lay flat. And like I said, I didn't put oil in the pieces because I thought it would make it too melty to the touch. But I realized that the grid, it doesn't matter because you're not really supposed to be touching it anyway. So I put oil in the chocolate after realizing it wasn't gonna work at its natural consistency, and it helped the grid look a lot smoother. Still not perfectly, but it definitely helped a lot. And then I just made 3 pieces just so that I could put them on my little cake. So let's taste this. I guess first I'll just taste the pieces. Man, I used to love white chocolate when I was little, but I kind of can't stand it now. I did get sick, like vomit sick from it twice, so maybe that's informing my opinion, but it's just much better. Definitely prefer regular chocolate. I mean, this cake is really just for me, so I'm just gonna eat it off the cake board. Cut out a little square. Looks good, just a simple one-layer cake. Oh my god, it's so good. I love this peanut butter frosting because it's basically like eating the peanut butter out of Nutter Butter, which is like the best part of Nutter Butter, obviously. And the fact that I have the chocolate adds another layer of flavor, because I think with just the vanilla and peanut butter, it might be, I don't know, a little strange perhaps. I mean, I guess like a Nutter Butter is just peanut butter, so maybe it's kind of like that vibe, but I really like the chocolate. I think to me, it's like necessary for the experience. I always say I'm not a frosting person. I tend to prefer cake without frosting, but if it's peanut butter buttercream or chocolate buttercream, then the story kind of changes a little bit because I really like those, but vanilla buttercream, I'd kind of rather do without it. I'm gonna try one now with the white chocolate, but just so I can have both experiences. Not sure what my plan is here. Yeah, it's okay. It's basically like what I said, like without the chocolate, I think it could use more dimensions, another flavor. White chocolate really isn't contributing a flavor, so this is basically just like the cake with the peanut butter frosting and that's it. And it's good. Better than the white chocolate alone, honestly, because the peanut butter is coming through, but I prefer the chocolate squares. But the overall verdict is that not only do I think this cake is beautiful, it also tastes good, which does not always happen, in my opinion, with my cakes that I make. But this one is tasty, which is good because it is for a friend. So I would hope that I perform well when I'm giving it to somebody else. So thanks for watching. If you have any interesting like cake ideas, let me know, because I feel like sometimes I could use help coming up with ideas. So if you have any ideas, comment them below. Hope you enjoyed and subscribe for more tiny treats.